was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when the phone rang. The fluorescent lights above flickered with that low hum you only notice when you're alone with your thoughts, and the green plastic chairs around me squeaked every time someone shifted their weight. I was 71 years old, a widow for 6 months, and my life had already been stripped of so much color. That morning I had convinced myself to schedule a routine checkup, one of those things my daughter Angela had insisted I should do. Now that you're alone, Mom. Her words still echoed with a tone I had once mistaken for affection. I lifted the phone. Mom. Angela's voice came through, but it was different. Cold, flat, the kind of voice you hear when a stranger delivers bad news. Angela, I said, is everything all right? We're going on a trip to Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye. And just like that, she hung up. The room around me blurred. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing for her, making her the center of my life, and she discarded me like trash in under 20 seconds. A woman across from me coughed. The receptionist called a patient's name, and life went on as though nothing had happened. I should have cried. Months ago, after Robert's death, tears had come easily while washing dishes, while folding his shirts, while hearing our wedding song on the radio. But not now. Instead, I smiled, a thin, strange smile that scared even me, because in that very moment I remembered something my late husband had left me, something Angela knew nothing about. The doctor eventually called me into his office. He was a young man with kind eyes, the kind who spoke slowly as though every elderly patient were fragile porcelain. Your health looks good, Mrs. Brooks, he said, flipping through my file. Rest more, eat better. You're doing well for your age. Well, for my age, I repeated, forcing a smile. If only he knew that my only daughter had just sold the last visible traces of my life with Robert. When I left the hospital, I didn't call a taxi. I no longer had a car, according to Angela. Instead, I walked to the bus stop. The chill of the autumn air bit at my cheeks, but the bite felt strangely comforting. It reminded me I was alive, still capable of choices. I boarded the bus and sat by the window, watching Rhode Island's small neighborhoods rush past the bakeries, the families unloading groceries, kids riding bikes after school. Every face carried its own secret tragedy. Mine was simple: betrayal by the person I had trusted the most. But I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. The memory of Robert was still so vivid. 6 months ago, we were at breakfast coffee with cream for me, black coffee for him, toast, and the newspaper folded neatly at his side. He had kissed my forehead. "Good morning, my love," he said. And then, in the next instant, he was gone, a sudden heart attack stealing him away. Those were his last words to me. But 3 days before his death, he had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia, no, Margaret," he had said, using that tender way of softening my name. "If anything happens to me, keep this in your dresser. Don't open it until you're ready." I had slipped it into the drawer, too consumed by funeral arrangements and Angela's sudden attentiveness to think of it again. She had helped me shop, taken me to doctors, and I had believed her visits were acts of love. Now I saw them differently: reconnaissance missions, testing the edges of my grief, finding the weak points where she could slide in her schemes. When the bus pulled up near my home in Newport, I stepped off, my heart pounding. For months, the house had felt like a mausoleum, every corner haunted by Robert's absence. But that evening, it was different. There was something waiting for me. I climbed the stairs slowly, the boards creaking under my feet. In the bedroom, I opened the dresser drawer. There it was, the manila envelope, untouched. My name written across it in Robert's precise handwriting. My hands trembled as I lifted it, as if it might explode. I sat on the bed we had shared for over 4 decades. Outside, dusk settled, filling the room with long shadows. For the first time since Robert's death, those shadows didn't scare me. I opened the envelope carefully, like unwrapping a fragile gift. Inside were documents, legal deeds, bank certificates, and a letter. My eyes blurred as I recognized his handwriting. "My dear Margaret," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. Forgive me for keeping secrets, but I wanted to protect you from worries. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the beach house, we own 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Ethan live. We also have shares in 3 companies worth more than you imagine. You are wealthy, my love. You always were. Now you are on paper, too. The words made my chest tighten. Robert, the bus driver who had worked 40 years to provide, had quietly turned every sacrifice into wealth. He had multiplied pennies into fortunes, never letting me suspect, and Angela had no idea. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I wandered through the house, touching every familiar object: Robert's reading chair, the chipped teacups Angela once mocked, the faded photographs of birthdays at Cape Cod. There was one picture of Angela as a little girl, 5 years old, perched on Robert's lap, her laughter frozen in time. I pressed my fingers to the glass. "Where did that sweet girl go?" I whispered. The phone rang early the next morning. It was Angela again, her tone lighter, almost syrupy. "Mom, I just wanted to tell you we transferred your share of the house and car sale into your account. 30%. That's fair, right?" I clenched my jaw. "My share," I repeated. "How generous." "Yes, Mom. We need the rest for an incredible business opportunity in Europe. Don't worry, we'll help you find a small apartment when we return." "Of course," I said evenly. "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you." The line clicked dead. I laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time since Robert's death. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. She had stolen my house, my truck, my memories, and then congratulated herself for throwing me crumbs. But little did she know I owned the building she called home. I checked my bank account online. As expected, the deposit was there, far less than the property was worth. They must have sold it fast, cheap, desperate for cash. Robert's truck, his pride and joy, had probably gone for a pittance. Angela thought she had erased me with 2 transactions and a 2-minute phone call. That afternoon, from my window, I watched them load suitcases into a cab. Ethan carried 2 massive bags. Angela flaunted a designer carry-on. They kissed in the driveway, laughing like teenagers, not once glancing at the house where her father had lived, loved, and died. When the cab pulled away, I brewed myself a cup of tea and spread Robert's documents across the kitchen table. Every page shimmered with possibility. I could call a lawyer. I could reclaim everything. I could crush Angela in court for fraud. But no, that would be too easy, too clean. Instead, I felt something else rising within me. Not anger strategy, not grief purpose. I called Mr. Peterson, the lawyer who had handled Robert's will. His calm voice steadied me. "Mrs. Brooks, I told you at the funeral, call me if you ever need anything." "Well," I said, "now I do." The next morning, I put on a dress Robert had always loved, deep wine-colored fabric, elegant, dignified. I applied a touch of makeup, brushed my silver hair into place, and looked in the mirror. For months I had seen only a broken widow staring back, but not today. Today I saw a woman with power. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown Boston, an old building with marble floors that whispered authority. He greeted me warmly, but when I laid out the documents Robert had hidden, his expression shifted to astonishment. "Mrs. Brooks, this is extraordinary," he said. "Robert was a genius. According to these papers, you are the sole owner of multiple properties, including—" he hesitated, glancing up. "Including the building where your daughter resides." I nodded. "I know. Do you want me to initiate legal action? We can reclaim the beach house immediately, and Angela can be charged with fraud." "No," I said firmly. "No police, no court. I want this done quietly. She must not know I'm behind it." Peterson studied me for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. "You want revenge?" I shook my head. "Not revenge, education." When I left his office, Boston bustled around me, cars honking, pedestrians rushing to lunch, street musicians playing violins for coins. Everyone carried their own stories. Mine was no longer one of loss. It was one of strategy. Angela thought she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't know was that I had everything. And I had just begun. The morning light slid through the curtains in pale ribbons, dust motes dancing in the beams like they were mocking my sleepless night. I had spent hours replaying Robert's letter in my mind, every word pulsing with both comfort and revelation. We weren't just ordinary middle-class folks scraping by on his bus driver's pension. He had built something vast, something strong enough to survive even his death. Angela didn't know. Ethan didn't know. To them, I was just a frail old woman they could strip bare of memories and property. But Robert's words whispered otherwise. "You are wealthy, my love. You always were." The line that haunted me most, however, was the last one. "There is another envelope, Margaret, for when the time is right." Another envelope? Where? My hands had searched the dresser, the closets, even the locked trunk in the attic. Nothing. Robert had always been meticulous, hiding things in plain sight, like puzzles he expected me to solve. It would have to wait. For now, I had other business. I called Mr. Peterson that morning, my voice steadier than it had been in months. "Mrs. Brooks," he said warmly, "how are you holding up?" "I'm ready to discuss the documents," I replied, "and I need your help." His office sat in a stone building downtown, the kind with marble steps and brass door handles, polished until they gleamed. I dressed carefully for the visit, choosing a charcoal skirt and blouse, the kind of outfit Robert used to say made me look like the boss of everything. On the bus ride to Boston, I stared out the window at the passing scenery, warehouses, coffee shops, young people hurrying to offices. Life carried on with its endless urgency, but for me, it had slowed into sharp focus. Peterson greeted me with a handshake that conveyed both warmth and gravity. He was in his late 50s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that saw more than you wanted them to. "Let's take a look," he said, guiding me into a conference room where the table gleamed like a mirror. I spread Robert's envelope across it, the deeds, the bank statements, the investment papers. Peterson's brows shot upward. "Good heavens," he whispered. "Robert Brooks was a very clever man. Did you know about any of this?" "Not a clue," I admitted. "He told me once that he never wanted me to worry. He succeeded in that." Peterson nodded, scanning page after page. "This is more than clever. This is airtight. He used shell companies, trusts, and clean investments. And here, look at this: Robert Investments Incorporated. You are the sole beneficiary." The name made my heart ache. He had used his own name, but disguised it in plain sight. Peterson tapped one document. "You are, on paper, the owner of the 20-story apartment building on Huntington Avenue, where your daughter and her husband live." A flicker of satisfaction coursed through me. "Yes, I know." "Mrs. Brooks, this gives you immense power. You could reclaim the beach house immediately. Angela had no legal right to sell it. We could file a lawsuit, press criminal charges for fraud. The court would side with you." I folded my hands calmly. "No, no court, no police." His head tilted. "Why not?" "Because I don't want Angela in prison. I don't want her destroyed. I want her educated. She needs to understand what it means to hit bottom." Peterson leaned back, studying me with a look I hadn't seen in years, a look of respect. "So this isn't revenge?" "Not revenge," I said softly. "Justice, in its purest form. She has to learn." When I left his office, Boston roared around me. Streetcars clanged, taxis honked, and the air smelled of roasted chestnuts from a vendor on the corner. I walked slowly, letting the crowd press past me. For the first time since Robert's death, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like a woman with a plan. Back in Newport, the neighborhood hummed with gossip. Aurora Johnson, my neighbor of 4 decades, stopped me as I watered my hydrangeas. Her eyes were sharp, the way only women who had seen everything can be. "Margaret, dear, is it true? Angela's gone to Europe?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "She left with Ethan. Business opportunities, apparently." Aurora pursed her lips. "Left you all alone, did she?" I smiled faintly. "So it seems." Her expression softened with pity, but there was something else too, a flicker of judgment, as though she was glad misfortune hadn't landed at her own doorstep. "Well," she said, "you know where to find me if you need anything." I nodded, but inside I laughed. If only she knew. The days passed with a strange rhythm. Officially, I was the poor widow abandoned by her only daughter. Neighbors brought casseroles, offered rides, dropped hints that perhaps I should consider a smaller place. I accepted their kindness with a gracious smile, all while knowing I owned half the block. At night, I studied Robert's documents at the kitchen table, tracing the threads of his hidden empire: the motel on the coast, the downtown condo, the bank accounts with balances that made my head spin. Every page was a reminder that my life wasn't ending, it was only beginning anew. Peterson called me one Wednesday. "Mrs. Brooks, I have good news. The sale of the beach house has been nullified. The buyers were innocent, so they got their money back. The house is yours again." I exhaled slowly. The house in Cape Cod, the place where Robert grilled fish on summer evenings, where Angela built sandcastles, where laughter once rang against the waves, it was mine again. "Excellent," I said. "And the Huntington Avenue building?" "That will take more paperwork. You've always technically owned it, but we'll transfer administrative control. 2 weeks, maybe less." "Good," I said. "Keep me updated." That weekend, I took the bus to Cape Cod to see the beach house. The cream-colored cottage stood exactly as I remembered, its porch gazing at the ocean. The new owners had placed potted plants on the steps, but otherwise it was unchanged. I stood across the street for nearly an hour, memories flooding me: Robert's laughter, Angela's squeals, birthday cakes melting in the summer Sunday. An older man came out carrying groceries. He noticed me lingering. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes," I said softly, "just remembering." He smiled politely. "We were told the lady who owned it was very ill. That's why the daughter sold it so quickly." I felt my stomach twist. Angela hadn't just sold it, she had lied about me. "I see," I murmured. "Sad story," the man continued. "We had to return the house after the sale was voided. We liked it very much, but, well, life happens." "Yes," I said, more to myself than to him. "Life happens." I left with a heavy heart. Angela hadn't simply betrayed me, she had erased me, turned me into a fictional invalid to grease her scheme. To her, I wasn't a person at all, just an obstacle to be removed. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the stack of deeds. One property in particular made my pulse quicken: the Huntington Avenue building, the place Angela called home. If she thought she could erase me, then she was about to discover how wrong she was. I called Peterson again. "I want Robert's truck back too," I said. He hesitated. "That may be harder. Your daughter had power of attorney after Robert's death. She used it to sell the truck legally." My throat tightened. I remembered signing papers Angela had placed in front of me, saying they were for funeral arrangements. I had been so numb with grief, I hadn't questioned a thing. "Can we challenge it?" "Yes. If we can prove deception. It will take time, but it's possible." "Do it," I said firmly. In the mornings, I kept up my role, the grieving widow, fragile but polite. I shopped at the corner market, accepted sympathetic smiles. In the afternoons, I became something else entirely: a businesswoman. I studied Robert's notes, tracked expenses, learned the language of investments. Each day I grew sharper, stronger. And as I pieced together the puzzle of Robert's empire, another truth emerged. Ethan Carter was drowning in debt: loans, credit cards, private lenders. He had even tried to mortgage the apartment he didn't legally own. When the banks realized this, it would explode in his face. Angela had chosen him over me, and soon she would pay the price. Angela always had a way of making everything look like a dream. On her social media posts, the trip to Europe sparkled with glossy filters: champagne glasses on a balcony in Paris, designer shopping bags clutched in her manicured hands, Ethan kissing her cheek in front of the Eiffel Tower. But pictures were just that, pictures. They didn't show the arguments behind hotel doors, the frantic phone calls Ethan made late at night, or the way Angela's credit card was declined at a boutique in Milan. In Boston, I watched the facade unravel from a distance. Peterson kept me updated about Ethan's debts, and every report he sent added more weight to the inevitable collapse. Ethan wasn't running a business venture in Europe, he was running from his creditors. Still, Angela didn't know that yet. For her, the trip began with excitement. She called me once, her voice chirping through the phone lines. "Mom, Paris is incredible. You should see the apartment Ethan rented, so chic, with a balcony overlooking the Seine." I forced a smile into my words. "I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, honey." But her tone carried a forced brightness, the kind people use when they're trying to convince themselves. 2 weeks later, her calls grew less frequent. When they came, her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Mom, Ethan's been busy with meetings. He says there's an investor here who might partner with us. Just keep us in your prayers, okay?" "I always do," I said softly. I hung up the phone and stared at Robert's envelope again. My late husband had planned for everything, it seemed, except for the weakness of our daughter's heart. She wanted to believe in Ethan because it was easier than admitting she had built her life on quicksand. Meanwhile, the lenders Ethan owed in New York were growing restless. Peterson called me one rainy morning. "Mrs. Brooks, I've spoken to a colleague in Manhattan. The Carter debts, well, let's just say these aren't the type of men who accept excuses. If they realize your daughter's signature is on some of the loans, she could be in serious danger." I clutched the phone tighter. "You mean physically?" "Yes," he said gravely, "physically." My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. "Then we need to get ahead of it," quietly. Across the Atlantic, Angela was living her own unraveling. She later told me, though not until months afterward, that Paris turned cold after the first week. Ethan's promises grew vague. The business meetings he described to her never materialized into contracts. One night, in a cramped cafe in Montmartre, Angela overheard Ethan on the phone. His voice was low but frantic, and though she didn't understand every word, she heard enough. Loans, deadlines, threats. When she confronted him, he snapped. "Don't you dare eavesdrop on my business, Angela. You wouldn't understand." "But I do understand," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You're in debt, aren't you? That's what all of this is about." Ethan slammed his coffee cup down so hard the saucer cracked. "It's temporary. Once the deal goes through, everything will be fine. But you need to stop asking questions." Angela told me later that she felt, for the first time, a chill run through her bones. It wasn't just the Paris winter, it was the realization that the man she had sacrificed everything for was a stranger. Meanwhile, I carried on my double life in Newport. To the neighbors, I was still the abandoned widow who couldn't afford a new car. To Peterson, I was the quiet orchestrator of a legal chess game. One afternoon, Aurora leaned over the fence while I tended my roses. "Margaret, dear, have you heard from Angela lately?" "She called a few days ago," I said lightly. Aurora frowned. "I hope she's not in trouble. My cousin's husband works at a bank in Boston. He says Ethan Carter's name has come up in some very unpleasant circles." I kept my expression calm, but inside, alarm bells rang. If gossip in Newport was already buzzing about Ethan's debts, how long before the wrong ears picked it up? Angela's glamorous posts stopped suddenly. No Parisian cafes, no Milan boutiques. Days turned into silence. Then, finally, a call came shaky, hurried, desperate. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan left me." I sat down at the kitchen table, my knees trembling. "Left you? Where are you?" "Still in Paris." He ran off with some woman. A waitress. He emptied our account, Mom, took the last of the money. The silence between us was unbearable. I could hear her sobs, the muffled sounds of a foreign city around her. For the first time, my daughter sounded like a lost child again. "I don't know what to do," she cried. "I don't have money for the hotel. I don't even have a ticket home." I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to reveal everything in that moment, to tell her about Robert's fortune, about the properties, about the power I held in my hands. But another part of me, the stronger part, whispered, "Not yet. She hasn't learned enough." "You'll find a way," I said gently. "You're stronger than you think." For the next week, Angela scrambled to survive in Paris. She sold her jewelry for cash, begged the airline for a discounted flight, and finally secured a seat home after maxing out a credit card Ethan had forgotten to cancel. During that time, Peterson confirmed what I feared. Ethan hadn't just abandoned Angela emotionally. He had used her forged signature on several loans, and those lenders were circling like vultures. "Mrs. Brooks," Peterson said one afternoon, "if she returns without protection, she could walk straight into their trap." I stared at Robert's envelope again, the neat handwriting spelling out my name. The words from his letter echoed in my ears. "There is another envelope, Margaret, for when the time is right." Where had he hidden it? And why had he left a second one? Angela returned to Boston, a ghost of herself. Aurora spotted her at the airport, and of course, news reached me before my own daughter did. She looked dreadful, Margaret, Aurora whispered, thin as a reed, pale as chalk, and she was alone. No, Ethan, just one battered suitcase. That night, my phone rang again. Angela's voice trembled. Mom, can I come see you, please? The irony stung. After throwing me away like garbage, after selling Robert's truck and our beach house, she now begged for refuge. I told her yes, because that was the role I needed to play, the weak mother, the fragile widow. But inside, I knew. This was exactly where the plan began to unfold. When Angela arrived at my door, she looked 20 years older. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, her hair limp, her eyes red from nights of crying. She hesitated before stepping in, as if ashamed. Come in, I said, my voice gentle. Do you want some coffee? She nodded, sitting at the same kitchen table where Robert once read the morning paper. For a moment, she looked like a teenager again, waiting for advice she didn't want to hear. Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, she said, tears spilling. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I reached across the table, taking her hand. We all make mistakes, Angela. The important thing is what we learn from them. But even as I spoke, my eyes darted to Robert's envelope lying in the drawer. His secret fortune was still hidden from her, and his second envelope, wherever it was, remained a mystery that gnawed at me. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the creak of old wood settling into the night. Angela was asleep upstairs, exhausted from jet lag and heartbreak, but I couldn't close my eyes. My hand still trembled from the discovery I had made in the dresser, Robert's second envelope. It was smaller than the first, the paper yellowed and brittle at the edges, as though it had waited patiently for years to be found. The handwriting, however, was steady, Robert's familiar script, for when the storm truly begins. I carried it to the kitchen table, the same place where I had read his first letter. The moonlight spilled through the window, painting silver streaks across the wood. My pulse drummed in my ears as I tore the seal and unfolded the letter inside. My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, then the calm has passed and the storm has arrived. I knew it would, eventually. Angela has always been vulnerable to charm, to the illusion of love and promises. I feared she would trust the wrong man, and if that time came, I wanted you to have this key. Taped to the bottom of the letter was a small brass key, no larger than my thumb. This key belongs to a safety deposit box at the Federal Bank in Boston, branch number 247. Inside you will find assets and instructions meant not just to protect you, but to protect Angela, should she fall victim to her own choices. Do not open it until you are certain she has nowhere else to turn. Only then will the lesson take root. Only then will you be ready to decide whether to shield her or let her face the full weight of her actions. With eternal love, Robert. I set the letter down, my breath catching. The first envelope had revealed our wealth, our empire, but this second one, this was something more personal. A tool, a safeguard, a secret Robert had designed specifically for this moment. Upstairs, I heard Angela shift in her bed, a restless sigh escaping her lips. She had returned from Europe hollow, broken. Ethan had drained her, abandoned her, and left her drowning in debts she hadn't even known existed. The storm had arrived. Robert had been right all along. I stared at the key in my palm, cold and heavy with responsibility. Should I open the box immediately? Or should I wait, let Angela stumble a little longer until the ground beneath her feet was steady enough to stand on truth? The next morning, Angela joined me in the kitchen. She looked smaller somehow, her once confident posture replaced with slumped shoulders. She held a chipped mug of coffee like it was an anchor. "Mom," she whispered, "I don't know how to thank you for letting me stay here." Her voice cracked on the last word. Here, the same house she had nearly taken from me. "You're my daughter," I said simply. Tears welled in her eyes. "I treated you terribly. I don't even know who I was when I made those choices." I nodded, but said nothing. She wasn't ready for the truth, yet the truth about who owned the roof over her head, the truth about Robert's empire, or the brass key burning a hole in my pocket. Later that week, Peterson called again. "Mrs. Brooks, I finalized the paperwork. You now have full control of the Huntington Avenue building. The eviction notices can be prepared at your request." I exhaled slowly. "Not yet," I said. "Are you sure?" Yes, timing is everything, Mr. Peterson. Timing is everything. But inside, the plan was sharpening. Angela had returned. Ethan had abandoned her, and the lenders were circling closer every day. The eviction notice would be my hammer, but Robert's second envelope that was my scalpel. Angela tried to busy herself with small acts of redemption. She cleaned her old bedroom, cooked dinner, even washed my laundry. It was strange to see her hands, manicured for years, scrubbing pots in my sink. One night, as we sat together on the porch, she whispered, "I keep thinking about Dad, about how disappointed he'd be in me." Her words stabbed me, because if Robert were alive, he wouldn't have raised his voice. He would have sat with her, calm and steady, and found a way to teach her. In his absence, that role had fallen to me. "Your father loved you," I said. "He always believed you would find your way." Angela leaned against my shoulder like she used to as a child. "I hope so, because right now, I feel like I've lost everything." She didn't know how close to the truth she was. The next day, I went to Boston. With the brass key clutched tightly in my purse, I stepped into the Federal Bank branch. The marble floors gleamed, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and ink. A clerk escorted me to the vault, where rows of safety deposit boxes stretched like a library of secrets. Box 247 slid open with a click, and inside was a slim leather folder. My hands shook as I lifted it out. Inside were documents, more deeds, yes, but also something else. A trust fund in Angela's name, carefully concealed, worth nearly $500,000. Attached was a letter in Robert's handwriting. "Margaret, this is for Angela when she is truly ready. It will not save her from her mistakes, but it will give her the chance to rebuild. Do not tell her until she has faced herself fully. The lesson must come before the reward. Only then will she be strong enough to carry it." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears burning in my eyes. Robert had trusted me to be both mother and teacher, protector and judge. The weight of that responsibility nearly crushed me. That evening, back in Newport, I hid the folder in my closet behind a stack of blankets. Angela couldn't know. Not yet. Over dinner, she tried to sound hopeful. "I applied for a few jobs today. Nothing glamorous, but maybe I'll get lucky." I smiled. "Good. Work is never glamorous, Angela. It's survival, and sometimes survival is the greatest kind of dignity." She nodded, her fork clinking against the plate. But I saw the flicker of shame in her eyes. She was beginning to understand. Days turned into weeks. Angela struggled, applying to jobs, facing rejections, and slowly learning humility. I watched her grow thinner, more tired, but also more grounded. Each time she came home defeated, I wanted to hand her the trust fund to save her from despair. But Robert's words echoed in my mind. The lesson must come before the reward. Then, one afternoon, Peterson called again. His voice was low, urgent. "Mrs. Brooks, I have news. Ethan has resurfaced in Paris. He's trying to marry that waitress for residency papers." But more importantly, the creditors in New York have discovered Angela's forged signature. They're asking questions, dangerous questions. My grip on the phone tightened. "How long before they come here?" "Not long," Peterson said grimly. "We need to act fast." Angela's silhouette stood in the doorway, the dim kitchen light casting her face half in shadow. Her eyes darted from the brass key on the table to the trust documents spread out before me. Her lips trembled as though the ground beneath her had just shifted. "Mom," she whispered again, "what is all this? What are you hiding from me?" For a moment, my body went cold. I had rehearsed many ways this confrontation might happen, but I had hoped to choose the timing, to control the moment. Instead, fate had forced my hand. I folded the documents calmly, trying to steady my breath. "Angela, sit down." She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair across from me. Her eyes were swollen from tears, but now they held a sharpness I hadn't seen in years, fear mixed with suspicion. I placed my hands flat on the table. "What you saw are papers your father left for me. For us. He prepared things I didn't know about until recently." Angela's brow furrowed. "Prepared things? What do you mean?" "Your father invested, quietly. Properties, accounts, trusts. He left me in charge of all of it." Her jaw dropped. "But," But you told me we had nothing, that Robert only left enough for you to get by. I met her gaze steadily. That's what I wanted you to believe, because you needed to learn what it meant to survive without safety nets, to understand what you had thrown away. Her face crumpled. So you let me believe we were poor? While you sat here with, she gestured wildly at the documents, with all this? Yes. My voice was quiet but firm, because if I had saved you immediately, you would never have changed. You would have kept believing that someone would always clean up your messes. Angela's hands shook as she covered her face. God, Mom, do you know what I've been through these last few weeks? Do you know what it feels like to be left alone in a foreign country with nothing? Yes, I said, my voice tightening, because that's what you did to me. Her hands dropped, her mouth parting in shock. The words landed heavy in the silence. The clock ticked. Angela stared at me, struggling between anger and understanding. Finally, she whispered, So this was all? A lesson? Yes, and one your father wanted as much as I did. He knew this day would come. That's why he left me the second envelope. That's why he made me promise not to reveal anything until the storm arrived. Angela leaned back, shaking her head. I don't know whether to hate you or thank you. You don't have to decide that now, I said softly. But you do need to understand, this isn't about punishment, it's about transformation. The following days were tense. Angela spoke little, moving around the house like a restless ghost. Some mornings she left early for job interviews, returning late with dark circles under her eyes. Other days, she barely left her room at all. But I noticed changes. She no longer demanded. She asked. She no longer assumed I would cook. She offered. Small cracks in her pride had begun to heal into something stronger. Yet danger lurked beneath the surface. Peterson called again, his tone more urgent than ever. Mrs. Brooks, I've confirmed it. The creditors in New York have identified Angela's forged signature. They don't care about the details, they see her as responsible. It's only a matter of time before they send people to collect. My stomach knotted. How much time? Days, maybe a week. I hung up, staring at the walls that had once held family photographs. Angela thought her battles were personal, about Ethan, about pride, about survival. She didn't know that forces much darker were closing in. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Angela broke the silence. Mom, I've been thinking, if Dad left all this money, if we have enough to solve everything, why not use it now? Why keep me suffering when you could make this all go away? I set my fork down. Because money doesn't erase consequences. You trusted a man who lied to you, who forged your name, who abandoned you. If I erase the consequences, you'll forget the lesson. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded slowly. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. She pushed her plate away. I want to fix this, Mom. I don't know how, but I don't want to run anymore. Tell me what to do. For the first time in months, I saw it, the flicker of the little girl who once sat on Robert's lap, eager to learn. The answer came sooner than expected. 2 nights later, a black sedan parked across from the house. I noticed it from the living room window, dark windows, engine idling. My heart froze. Angela came downstairs in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. What's that car doing out there? I forced calm into my voice. Probably just someone lost. But I knew better. The storm had reached Newport. The next morning, Peterson confirmed my fear. They're here, he said grimly. The creditors, and they're not patient men. They'll want answers and payment. I clutched the phone, the brass key heavy in my pocket. Then it's time. That afternoon, I sat Angela down at the kitchen table. The air between us was heavy, almost electric. Angela, I said, sliding Robert's second letter toward her. There's something you need to read. Her hands shook as she opened it. Her lips moved silently as she read her father's words. By the time she finished, tears streamed down her cheeks. He planned this? She whispered. Yes. He wanted you to learn, but he also wanted to protect you once you had. Angela clutched the letter to her chest, sobbing quietly. I don't deserve this. No, I said gently, but that doesn't mean you can't become someone who does. She lifted her head, determination flickering in her eyes. Then let me face it. Whatever comes, don't hide me, Mom. Let me fight. For the first time, she wasn't begging to be saved. She was asking to stand beside me. Resolution divided by transition. Cliffhanger. That night, as Angela slept, I sat awake at the kitchen table with Peterson on the phone. His voice was steady, but the words made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Brooks, they've set a meeting. Tomorrow night. They want Angela there. If she doesn't show, they'll come looking, and they won't be gentle." I stared at the moonlight glinting on Robert's brass key. The storm had arrived in full force, but the question lingered, sharp and unyielding. Would Angela's newfound strength be enough to survive what was coming? The night air in Newport carried a damp chill, the kind that clung to your skin and seeped into your bones. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter from Robert and the brass key, while Angela paced the room like a caged animal. "They want me there?" she asked again, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. I nodded. "Yes. Peterson says if you don't show, they'll come here, and that would be worse." Angela wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't understand. I didn't sign anything. It was Ethan. Why should I have to pay for his sins?" "Because he used your name," I said softly, "and because to them, you're the easiest target." Her face twisted in anguish. "Mom, I'm not strong enough for this." I reached across the table and took her trembling hand. "Yes, you are, but you won't be alone." The following evening, Peterson picked us up in his dark sedan. He looked grim, his jaw tight as he drove toward a warehouse on the outskirts of Boston. The roads were slick with rain, neon reflections shimmering like broken promises across the windshield. Angela sat in the back seat, silent, staring at her hands. I could see the girl she used to be, the one who thought life was all about glitter and comfort, but I also saw the woman she was becoming. The one who had tasted loss, betrayal, and shame, and was learning the bitter strength they left behind. "We don't negotiate with them directly," Peterson said, his voice low. "We listen. We buy time. I'll handle most of the talking." "And if they demand something?" I asked. "Then we offer proof that Ethan forged her signature. I've prepared the documents." "But..." He glanced at Angela in the rearview mirror. "They're not men who care about papers." Angela shivered. The warehouse loomed ahead, its corrugated metal walls glistening under yellow floodlights. A single black SUV sat parked near the entrance. Two men stood outside, smoking, their eyes sharp as razors. When we stepped out of the car, Angela clutched my arm. I could feel her pulse racing through her skin. I whispered, "Remember, no fear. Fear is blood in the water." Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil and rust. A folding table stood in the center, surrounded by three men in tailored suits that didn't match the setting. Their eyes were cold, measuring us like prey. One of them, tall with slicked back hair, gestured to the chairs. "Mrs. Carter, sit." Angela stiffened at the name. Carter, the name she had once worn proudly, the name that had chained her to Ethan's lies. Peterson cleared his throat. "My client is Angela Brooks, not Carter. She is not responsible for her husband's debts. We have documentation." The tall man slammed his fist on the table. "I don't care about your papers. Ethan owes us. He's gone. That makes her the debt." Angela flinched. I placed a hand over hers, steadying her. "Then you should know," I said calmly, "that she has nothing. Ethan left her with nothing. Taking from her is like squeezing water from stone." The man leaned forward, his gaze slicing into me. "And you are?" "Her mother." He smirked. "Mothers always pay the price eventually." The conversation spiraled into threats and demands. Peterson presented evidence, bank statements, forged signatures, but the men barely glanced at them. Their language wasn't legal, it was primal. They wanted blood, money, or control. Finally, the tall man leaned back. 200,000. That's what Ethan owes. Pay it within 30 days, or your daughter pays another way." Angela's face went pale. I don't have that kind of money." "That's your problem," he said coldly. Silence thickened, pressing down on us like the weight of the ocean. My mind raced. I could end this right now. I had more than enough in Robert's hidden accounts. But giving in too soon would undo everything: the lesson, the transformation, the hard road Angela had just begun to walk. Instead, I looked straight into the man's eyes. "We'll find a way, but 30 days is not enough." He smirked again, a predator playing with his meal. "Then maybe we'll visit your little house in Newport. Nice neighborhood, quiet street, easy access." Angela gasped, her hand gripping mine tightly. Peterson spoke quickly. You'll get your money, but you give us time, 60 days. The man considered, then nodded once. 60, no more. When we left the warehouse, Angela collapsed into tears in the back seat. Mom, I can't do this. They'll kill us. I know they will. I turned to face her. Listen to me, Angela. You are not the woman who left me to chase Ethan's lies. You are stronger than you think, and you have something those men will never understand. She wiped her tears. What? Me, I said firmly. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Aurora, always quick with the latest news, caught me outside. Margaret, I saw a strange car on your street last night. Black windows, out-of-state plates. Do you know anything about that? I forced a smile. Probably lost tourists. But inside, my fear grew. The storm Robert had warned about wasn't on the horizon anymore. It was here. Angela surprised me that afternoon. Instead of hiding in her room, she walked into the kitchen with a determined look. Mom, I got a job, she said. I blinked. A job? Yes, night shifts cleaning offices. It doesn't pay much, but it's something. I can't just sit here waiting for you to fix everything. Pride swelled in my chest, mixed with sorrow. She didn't know that money wasn't the real solution anymore. The creditors wouldn't settle for a few thousand earned scrubbing floors. But the dignity in her voice, the spark of independence, was worth more than gold. Robert's lesson was working. That night, I unlocked the closet where I had hidden the trust folder. I opened it again, staring at the $500,000 fund Robert had prepared for Angela. Enough to erase the debt and save her future. But Robert's words echoed. Do not tell her until she has faced herself fully. Was she ready? Or would revealing this too soon shatter the fragile progress she was making? Peterson called again. Mrs. Brooks, I've uncovered something else. Ethan's fraud is deeper than we thought. He not only forged Angela's signature, he used property documents tied to the Huntington Avenue building. The lenders may soon realize your daughter was never the true owner. My blood ran cold. If the creditors discovered I was the real owner, the storm would shift to me, and Angela would know everything. The phone's dial tone still echoed in my ear long after the caller had hung up. Their words clung to me like frost. We know about the Huntington Avenue building, and we know who really owns it. My hand shook as I replaced the receiver. For weeks, I had played the role of the helpless widow, hiding behind Robert's carefully woven secrets. But now, the mask had slipped. They knew. The question was, how much? Angela shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing her sore hands from another night shift. Who was it? She asked, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. I forced a smile. Wrong number. But she studied me, narrowing her gaze. No, Mom, that wasn't a wrong number. Something's wrong. Tell me. I shook my head. Not yet. You're not ready. Her fists clenched, the old fire in her returning. I've scrubbed toilets, washed office floors, pawned my jewelry. I've faced every humiliating thing you've thrown at me these last weeks. Don't tell me I'm not ready. I looked at her, really looked. The spoiled daughter who had once sold my beach house for pocket money was gone. In her place stood a woman, raw and scarred, but stronger for it. Robert's plan had worked. The question was whether I had the courage to follow it through. That afternoon, Peterson came over. His briefcase looked heavier than usual, and his face was grim. They've connected the dots, he said the moment he stepped inside. Those men know you own the Huntington building. If they can prove it, they'll come after you instead of Angela. Maybe both of you. Angela froze, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. Wait, what did he just say? I shot Peterson a warning look, but it was too late. Angela set her mug down with a clatter. You own the building? The one I lived in with Ethan? The one I thought we were struggling to pay rent for? I exhaled. The time for half-truths was over. Yes, I said simply. It's mine. It's always been mine. Angela's face drained of color. So all this time when I thought you were broke, when I thought we had nothing, you were hiding this from me? Yes. My voice was steady, though my heart raced. Your father built something far greater than you knew. He trusted me to reveal it only when the time was right. She shook her head, tears springing to her eyes. And you decided the right time was after I'd lost everything, after I'd sold your house, after I'd treated you like garbage? Yes, I whispered, because you needed to lose everything before you could understand its value. Angela pressed her palms against the table, her knuckles white. Do you have any idea how cruel that sounds? Cruel? I leaned forward. Do you know what was cruel, Angela? Sitting in that doctor's office when you called me to say you'd sold the house, the truck, everything your father and I built like it was trash. Cruel was realizing my own daughter valued me less than a man who would leave her for a waitress in Paris. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Angela finally spoke, her voice trembling. So what now? What do we do? Peterson cleared his throat. We need to decide quickly. If those men know the truth, they'll demand the debt from you, Mrs. Brooks, and they won't play fair. Angela turned to me, her eyes wide with fear. Mom, please, use the money. End this, before it's too late. I hesitated. Robert's second letter burned in my memory. Do not give it to her until she has faced herself fully. Was this the moment? Or was there more for her to learn? The following days blurred with tension. Angela worked her shifts at night, returning pale and exhausted. During the day, she tried to help around the house, desperate to prove she wasn't the same woman who had abandoned me. But the threats crept closer. A car idled outside for hours one evening. An envelope appeared on the porch, blank except for 3 words scrawled in black ink. Time is running. Angela found it before I did. She read the note, her hands trembling. They're coming, Mom. We can't wait anymore. Her fear pierced me, but behind it I saw something new: resolve. She wasn't just asking me to save her, she was asking me to let her fight beside me. One night, as rain lashed against the windows, Angela sat at the kitchen table, staring at Robert's second letter. Dad knew, she whispered. He knew I'd fall. He knew I'd choose wrong. Her tears dripped onto the page. And still, he left me this chance. Why? Why would he trust me after everything? I touched her hand. Because love isn't about never failing, it's about believing you can rise again after you do. Angela squeezed my hand tightly. Then let me rise, Mom. Don't carry this burden alone anymore. The next morning, Peterson called. His tone was clipped. They've moved the deadline. 1 week. If they don't see money or proof, they'll act. My blood chilled. Act how? You don't want to know. Angela overheard every word. When I hung up, she stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her eyes were blazing. We're not running, she said. Not this time. We're going to face them, together. The confrontation came sooner than expected. 3 nights later, as Angela and I returned from the grocery store, 2 men stepped out from the shadows. Mrs. Brooks, one said smoothly, his accent sharp as glass. It's time we had a talk. Angela froze, clutching the grocery bags so tightly the handles tore. I stood tall, though my knees trembled. Then talk. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. You have 1 week, but we're not waiting quietly anymore. Every day you delay, we'll take something. First your peace, then your safety, then who knows? Angela gasped, but I forced calm into my voice. You'll get your answer. In 1 week. They stepped back, fading into the night. The bag slipped from Angela's hands, oranges rolling across the driveway. Mom, she whispered, her voice breaking. They're going to kill us. I pulled her close. Not if we play this right. That night, as Angela cried herself to sleep, I sat in the dark living room, Robert's letter clutched to my chest. His words haunted me. Only when she has faced herself fully. Had she? She had lost everything, worked for pennies, admitted her mistakes, begged not for rescue, but for partnership. Maybe this was the moment Robert had prepared me for. I rose, went to the closet, and retrieved the trust documents. $500,000, enough to pay the debt, clear her name, and buy us peace. But as I laid the folder on the table, a thought gnawed at me. Paying them might end the threats, but it wouldn't end the cycle. Men like that always wanted more. The folder lay on the table like a loaded gun, $500,000 hidden in trusts, meticulously prepared by Robert's steady hand. Enough to silence the creditors, enough to erase Ethan's betrayal, enough to give Angela the chance her father had always intended. But Angela's words still echoed in the air. We're not just paying them, we're ending this, for good. I studied her face in the dim light. She wasn't trembling anymore. The fragile, broken girl who had returned from Paris was gone. In her place stood a woman, my daughter, but not the one I had known. This one had been forged in fire. "Angela," I said carefully, "what do you mean by ending this?" Her jaw tightened. "If we give them the money, they'll come back. Men like that always do. You know it. I know it. We can't just feed the beast. We have to cut its throat." I winced at her bluntness, but she wasn't wrong. I had thought the same in the silence of my nights. Paying them would be temporary. Robert hadn't built an empire for us to throw it into a pit. "And how do you propose we do that?" I asked. Angela's eyes burned with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "We use their greed against them. We don't just pay them, we trap them." Peterson listened to our plan the next day, his expression grim but intrigued. "It's dangerous," he said finally. "But it might work. If we can prove extortion and tie it to Ethan's forged contracts, law enforcement will be forced to act. But you'll need evidence, and you'll need to walk right into their den to get it." Angela didn't hesitate. "Then that's what we'll do." For the first time, I realized she wasn't asking me to carry the weight anymore. She was stepping into the storm, shoulder to shoulder. The meeting was set in the same warehouse where the threats had first begun. Peterson came with us, carrying hidden recorders. My heart hammered as we walked inside, the echo of our footsteps loud in the cavernous space. The tall man with slicked-back hair sat at the folding table again, flanked by his men. His smile was a razor blade. "Mrs. Brooks," he purred, "and the prodigal daughter, I hope you brought my money." Angela stepped forward before I could answer. "We brought proof," she said boldly, placing a folder of forged documents on the table. "Ethan used my name. I never signed any of this. You know it." The man's smile faltered for a moment. Then he leaned back, amused. "You think this saves you? Paper means nothing here. Money does?" Angela's voice didn't waver. "Then here's the deal. You get your money, but not today. You'll get it through official channels, through lawyers, through banks. Which means if anything happens to me or my mother, the entire transaction will collapse, and you'll be left with nothing." The men exchanged glances. Angela had spoken their language, risk and reward. The tall man leaned forward again. "You're clever, like your father." My heart stilled. "You knew Robert?" He smirked. "Everyone who built something in this city knew Robert. He played the game well. Looks like his daughter inherited that talent after all." Angela held his gaze. "Then, you know he also knew how to bury people who crossed him." The silence that followed was suffocating. For a moment I feared they'd lash out, but then the tall man chuckled. "You've got spine, I'll give you that." "Fine. 60 days, not a day more. After that, if I don't see my money," he tapped the table, slow and deliberate, "you'll wish you never inherited your father's talents." Outside, Angela exhaled sharply, her hands trembling only once we were safe in the car. "Mom," she whispered, "I think we bought ourselves time, but that's all." Peterson nodded. "She's right. They won't just wait patiently. We need more evidence before the 60 days are up, enough to bury them for good." I looked at Angela. She wasn't broken anymore. She wasn't begging for rescue. She was ready to fight. And for the first time since Robert's death, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. The following weeks were a blur of planning. Peterson worked his legal contacts, preparing traps. Angela continued her job, grounding herself in humility. Each night we talked strategy at the kitchen table. And slowly, a bond began to knit between us. The cracks of betrayal remained, but the threads of love wove through them. We were mother and daughter again, but forged into something harder, sharper. Then came the breakthrough. Peterson handed us a recording device one evening. "We've got one shot," he said. "Angela, you're going to meet them again. Pretend to negotiate. Keep them talking. Get them to admit extortion, threats, the forged contracts. Once we have that on tape, they're finished." Angela nodded, her hands steady. "I can do it." I wanted to argue, to protect her, to take her place, but I saw the fire in her eyes. This was her battle to fight. The second meeting was colder, darker. Angela walked in alone this time, Peterson and I waiting nearby with the recorder. She held herself tall, her voice firm as she laid the bait. "You said 60 days, she began, "but maybe we can make this easier for everyone. Less noise, less waiting." The tall man smirked. "Now you're speaking my language. What do you suggest? Angela leaned forward. You tear up Ethan's contracts. You walk away. And in return, you get a piece of something bigger. My father's empire. His brows rose. Go on. Angela slid a blank sheet of paper across the table. Write your demands. Every one of them. Because if I go down, you go down with me. Those documents are already with a lawyer. If anything happens to me or my mother, your entire operation will be exposed. The man's smile faded. You're bluffing. Angela's voice was steel. Try me. And then it happened, the words we had waited for. He leaned forward, his voice low but unmistakable. You think you can threaten me? I've killed men for less. I'll take your money, your buildings, your blood if I have to. Don't test me. The recorder caught every word. When Angela walked out of the warehouse, her face was pale, but her eyes blazed with triumph. She clutched the recorder in her hand like a weapon. We got it, she whispered. I pulled her into an embrace, tears streaming down my face. For the first time I realized Robert had been right. The storm had broken her, but it had also remade her.